All right, thank you for coming, everybody. Thanks for the organizers of PyCaribbean for having me. It's been a blast so far, and I'm looking forward for the next 2 days. And also have been in the Dominican Republic for the last about 2 weeks for some vacation and just enjoyed the sun. So today I want to talk to you about the security we have in Django, or most of the security processes we have in Django. So given the title, if you find a security issue, how do we go from you find something to we fix it, or you fix it and we come up with a release? And also I want to talk to you about the second part there afterwards, about the typical security issues you have in web applications in general. And I want to start off with giving a short introduction to myself. I'm Markus Holtermann. I'm a Django core developer since about 2015, I think. And I work as a software engineer at LaterPay, which is a software as a service payment infrastructure thing for digital content. And who of you have used Django or used Django? Can I get a show of hands? That's 75%. So I hope everybody of you who uses Django has seen one of those emails. This is a security notification email that we send out when we release a new security release. Essentially it states which versions are affected, which are the patched versions, and a bit about a link to where we have details on the issue and a general way of how you should report security issues. And the first, as mentioned, the first part of this talk is about essentially the step of you sending something to security@djangoproject.com and us being able to send out such an email. And you find the whole process worded in a worded form on this link, and it's essentially the term Django security policy that you're looking for. And at any time, there are 4 Django versions that are supported and will receive security issues. Won't receive security issues, but bug fixes for security issues. First off, that's the master branch, which is kind of unsurprising because that's where every single commit goes into Django. And then there are the 2 most recent releases. So at the current time, this is Django 2.0 and 1.11, given their patch releases. And then there's also the long-term support versions. So at the current time, that's 1.8 and 1.11. And so we have the master branch 2.0, 1.11, and 1.8 that get security issues. At the time we released Django 2.0, Django 1.10 did not receive any further security issues. So if you're on anything below 1.11, except for 1.8, you are not on the secured, well, you're potentially not on the secure Django version. And yeah, the process that we have here to report, to take care of security issues that are reported starts off with somebody sending a mail to security@djangoproject.com. That's an email address that's monitored by a team of 10 people or so, the Django security team that I'm also a part of. And we try to be quite responsive on this list. Probably within a couple of hours, you will get at least an acknowledgement that we got your mail and that we are looking into it. Not an automated thing, but like a human replying to your email. If you don't get something within 2 or 3 days, you probably want to resend your email. Also, if it's a really severe bug that you found, don't stop and emailing us earlier. Like, if it's something that's really screwed, get in touch with us potentially after 12 hours, whatever feels right to you at that point. Apart from that, please don't communicate that you found a security issue in Django to anybody else except for this security email list. The security team will take care of announcing and disclosing the issue once it's being fixed and released. So you signed a mail and we said, thanks, we got that, and now we are assessing the issue. So is what you reported actually an issue? Is it something that we don't consider an issue because it's kind of by design? There are a couple of things that we regularly get because apparently or probably don't make it explicit enough why it's not an issue, so we probably should fix that. But there's you could send something that's valid, and we will say, okay, this is a great find. Thanks for reporting that. Or we can go with, thanks for the report, but it's actually not an issue. Let's discuss this publicly. When we go with and say, yeah, that's an issue, we go and start figuring out what the actually issue is. And this goes kind of back and forth between you and us. And it goes into the, is what you sent really, or what you found really what we understood? And this goes along with the time where a patch is preferred or prepared. If you prepare a patch, then we make sure that the patch actually solves the issue you reported, or the way you reported the issue and we understood it. Or if you don't want to provide a patch, we are providing it, we will provide you with a patch we came up with to make sure that what we wrote fixes the issue you found. So it's this back and forth and making sure that we are both on the same page. And this also goes along with confirming the fix. There's no point in you submitting an issue, we're saying, yes, that's an issue, you say, submitting a patch, recommitting it, and it doesn't actually solve the issue, the underlying issue. It could solve something on the surface, but that doesn't really help if the bug is much deeper in the code base. And this is a very important part of the process, because you have, at this point, you have multiple people, multiple set of eyes that look at the code and make sure it's actually valid and it actually fixes the problem. And there's essentially two situations in the past where this, well, it happened, but it didn't really happen. This multiple eyes, or where multiple eyes didn't find the issue. I suppose all of you are familiar with the settings allowed hosts. Django 1.4 was a regular release, and then 1.141 fixed an issue somewhere in header poisoning. And 1.42 fixed it again, and 3.4 fixed it again. Essentially, we ran through 3 or 4 releases until we finally fixed it. A different one was back when we introduced or changed the PBKDF hashing implementation. It took 2 or 3 rounds until we fixed semi-DOS attack vector. So our implementation was technically correct, but it was, in certain conditions, could be really, really slow. And that's not what we want. Anyway, so we have the fix, we are sure this actually works, and we're happy with the code changes we have there. So the next step is that we pre-notify a couple of organizations and institutions. And we provide them with an information about what the issue is and with a patch that you and we came up with. This list consists of 3 groups of organizations and institutions. Essentially, the first one is redistributors of Django. So let's just say Linux distributors. Then if the issue affects a certain library, a Django third-party library, then we probably, at least if they have a certain track record, talk to them beforehand and make sure that they can fix it simultaneously or submit issue a release simultaneously. And then there's big organizations that I won't name anyone, that are potentially highly affected by a security issue in Django when it's being released and they are not secure. So we also will announce the upcoming release on the Django Announce email list, and we'll give a short or a time window when we're probably going to release the version and with the severity of the issue. So say on next Tuesday at 2 p.m. UTC, we're going to release a new security issue that is classified as medium. That at least gives you or your employer the chance to make sure there's a few people there that can at least look into the issue and then figure out if it's something you need to fix like right now or need to do next in your process. Not like 3 months later, but the next on your list. And then following the pre-notification, there's a security release. This essentially means we commit the patch to the public branches. And at this point, the issue has been disclosed. The patch is there, the Git commit has some indicator security release in there. So if you just follow that, you will find all security commits. And at this point, there's pretty much no way back. If this fix is broken or we figure out, okay, this actually doesn't solve the issue, then, well, we screwed up. There's no way back. The issue has been disclosed. It's worth noting that all security issues just go on top of the regular bug fix releases. So when you have 2.0.1 with some as a last release, and then a couple of bug fixes that would go into 2.0.2, and we have a security fix as well, then 2.0.2 will have the security fix and those bug fixes that accumulated after 2.0.1. But given that we are rather conservative on bug fixes, on not bug fixes, but backporting fixes on changes to other release branches, this is not really that big of a deal. Following that, we release a version to PyPI, our own servers, and you can install the update. And with that, we also announced the release on our blog and in various email lists. So Django announced, Django develops, Django users, and the OSS security open wall list, which pretty much has all security issues and releases out there for everything. And then there's a different thing that came up over the last years and predominantly focused by companies, but Django is happy to be able or to be a part of that, which is a bounty. So there's essentially two ways you can receive a bounty for finding security issues or fixing security-related things in Django. One is through HackerOne and the Internet Bug Bounty program, which essentially means if you find a security issue and report it to us, we are able to pay out of a budget we get there from Facebook and Microsoft to pay out for the security issues that you found. The amount depends on the severity and the issue you found within certain constraints. And so yeah, say about those two companies what you want, they do put money in open source. And the other program is part of the Google Security Patch Rewards program, and it works somewhat differently in that it doesn't necessarily need to be a security report, or it doesn't have to be a security report, it needs to be a patch that you submit. And the patch doesn't need to fix a security issue, it can be a security hardening or security feature. So the password validation that was added a couple of versions ago would have been one of the things you could that the author could apply for the rewards program by Google. And yeah, the amount of the money you can receive there also depends on the size and impact of your patch. Now, how the heck do you apply this and to your project if you have an open source project or a company? And now, we at Django, we think at least that the process we have works. It works for us. It doesn't need to work for everybody. But I think the process we have works and is reasonable, short, and declarative and communicative that not too many screw-ups happen. Well, I don't really know of one. But yeah, how do you apply this to your project? And first off, I'd suggest to set up a communication or reporting channel also. Allow people or communicate a way how people can reach you or a security set of people on the project you're working on. A sentence, if you think or you're unsure if you found a security issue, please get in touch with via this email address, goes a long way. Don't make people look for a way to get in touch with you if they found a security issue. They won't bother, they're just going to report it publicly or not reported at all. Neither one is to any benefit to you, only if they reach out to you privately. And then also, don't let them wait for a response. You don't need to maintain it 24/7, and don't expect anybody of you to do that. But telling them, okay, I'm working alone on this project, and please give me a week to respond. Then as a reporter, I know what to expect. If I get a response within a few hours, great. If I got to wait for 6 days because the other person is not reachable, then sure, but I do know that it can take some time. And then, yeah, monitor this reporting channel. Make sure that you actually receive those notifications and not just send them to dev null or whatnot. And then fix the issue. It doesn't need to be like this whole process we have in Django, which is a bit more complex than for a small third-party library maybe. But when either ask the reporter if they want to contribute and submit the patch, and then review that, and also go back and forth and make sure that the patch they have or you provided fixes the issue, and do this privately. Don't do that in GitHub issues or anywhere where it's public and anybody can like already figure out the security issue and like use it for attacks on other sites. And then release and announce. These 4 steps is pretty much all it takes. And also the release, make sure people know where you announce that there is a security issue in your library and they should update. You don't need to provide exploits. And I think I advise you to not provide exploits, because that just makes it easier for attackers to misuse your library. My suggestion is to probably always announce a security issue to the OSS security list, because that's just where everything goes. And it's this dump of security things. If you're interested, I really suggest to subscribe to that. And then lastly on that set is learn from it. For your own sake, accept the fact that you had to submit a security release. It happens. And don't stress out over it. You're all humans, and we all make mistakes, and it's just software. It's like this weird thing that nobody understands how it works. And for what it's worth, Django had over 60 security issues since its beginning. And there's a lot more people on that code base that look at code. So if you are working on a library on your own, then things happen. So let's look at Django's history a bit, and with that into what kind of security issues there are. First off, when you open the Django project website, you have this sentence, Django takes security seriously and helps developers avoid common security mistakes. And that's kind of the thing what we really try to do when it comes to security. And so to say, let's try to let us make the mistake or do the mistake so you don't do that, and we fix the issue for everybody at once. And with that, let's look at some numbers. So these are the CVEs per year, and these are just the plain numbers that we requested per year. CVEs are the common vulnerability and exposure numbers. Let's ignore 2018 for now, because it's only like 10–15% into the year. But what you can see is that the numbers seem to just increase from 26 to 2015. And sure, they do, but this is statistics and numbers lie, and you can interpret anything into those numbers if you just want to. But if you look at or add a bit more context to the entire thing, then maybe it's just the thing that Django became more popular, and more people looked into on the code base and looked into finding security issues and looked into hacking sites, and then reported those issues. That's a valid thing, a valid approach, and there's nothing that's like proves or disproves that theory. But then also numbers dropped afterwards, which is Django now secure than before? Who knows? Who knows what other security issues there are in Django? Unless they are reported, we don't know about them. Otherwise, we would have fixed them already. And then the other thing, when you look at taking these numbers and put them in different categories of issues we have, you end up with 2 types of or classifications of issues that are rather common in web development. First off, you have the DOS attack vector, which is just too easy to make. And the other one, also unsurprising in web, is cross-site scripting. And those 2 account for pretty much half the numbers or half the security issues we had in Django since the beginning, since we counted them. And well, as said, DOS is just too easy to make. DOS or mistakes, it's just too easy to make mistakes that account for DOS vectors. Comparing a string or comparing something that can be incredibly large for similarity with something else can just take time. And if you do that without making sure that the input is not too long, then, well, there's your issue. There's so many things you can do wrong. And then the others are just comparably seldom. Information leakages happen, unfortunately, but depending on the type of leakage, it's also not that big of a deal. So let's go into those classifications in a bit more detail and look into how you, at least for some of them, how you make those issues and how you can prevent making them. And let's start off with XSS, cross-site scripting. Does everybody know what cross-site scripting is? Okay, so essentially what it does is an attacker is able to embed JavaScript on your site and then execute that JavaScript in the context of the current user. And you don't want that, because they can do whatever they want with this JavaScript. And since I see people taking notes, the thing you have at the bottom here, this is wrong. Do not do this. This is bad. Don't. There's essentially two options I suggest to do. Either this one, wrap the data you have, pipe it through escape.js, put it in a string or in quotes, and then pass it as JSON. That's the only safe way. And hang on, there's a pipe JSON missing. Well, there's no JSON pipe JSON dump, so to say, is missing here. The other option you have, if you are not allowed to use inline JavaScript for your content security policy, for example, then you can put it in the data, and you don't need to escape anything explicitly there. This is unless you turn off auto escaping, which you should not do. This is auto escaped, and you can then, with jQuery or whatnot, access the data like this. These are the only two secure ways to put JSON in HTML. Do not do anything else, please. Been there, done that. Then the other thing, CSRF, cross-site request forgery. This beautiful way of injecting an image with a link that transfers money to your account from somebody else's. You don't want to do that. Well, you want to do that, but other people don't want to have that. So CSRF works by the way of submitting either a header or a cookie as part of a request, along with some request data. And for every request that modifies state on a server. So you should never do any changes with GET requests on the server side. Only post, put, and whatnot. The security in containing a token or this cookie or the CSRF token in a cookie or in a header is by the fact that browsers don't allow third-party scripts to inject something in their headers. So given that, you can be reasonably secure to not have CSRF attacks if you just use Django the way it's set up and use post requests for manipulating data on the server. Then, as mentioned, denial of service attacks. There are just too many examples, and I think the most fun one from Django's history is back before Django 1.4, there was there still is a URL field, but this URL field had a flag in there, verify URL. Guess how this could be misused? Every time a model was changed and a validator ran on this field, Django did an whatever URL open on this URL that you defined in the field. And when this URL you define is a malicious site and you are able to throttle the request, the bytes that go through the request or the response at like 1 byte a minute, and you have like 10 workers and do 10 requests, then all your workers are busy and your site is down. So this is, from my perspective, the most fun issue in Django's history and of security. And then unvalidated redirects. This is like gold for phishing sites. You have this next parameter in your login site, in your login URL, where you want to redirect a user afterwards. Great, let's just redirect the user to whatever URL is in there. That's the best idea that's there, because they logged in and then they are sent to the phishing site and they show the same form, just show password invalid or password invalid, please try again. And here we go, here's my data. Feel free to use that. Yeah, please validate stuff like that. There's like also half a dozen of issues that happened in Django, because browsers are interesting and treat URLs not the same. Like, look at the security issues and the related patches. It's just gold for how browsers behave. And then there's header poisoning. This is the stuff that happened with the allowed host stuff. This URL validation or this redirect validation kind of relates to this one, in that we only allow redirects to hosts that are in the allowed hosts list. So if you are able to inject a host, then all this redirect URL validation is just broken, because I can put my evil money wiring site that's not doesn't have 2p in its name in the redirect URL, and yeah, it's just fun. And then there's remote code execution, also really interesting. But luckily, I think there's only been like 1 or 2 issues in Django in its history, and they both have been really hard to exploit. Like, you had to be able to install stuff on the server side and then make sure it's under certain Python paths to be automatically loaded. And the moment where you are able to install arbitrary code in the server, I already consider the server compromised and like broken, and there's no point in like maintaining any more security because it's fundamentally broken. Authentication and authorization failures are about people being able to pretend to be somewhere who they are not, or be able to do things they are not supposed to be doing. So stuff like forgetting login required on a delete user request is kind of unfortunate, but easy to fix. Also, you probably don't want to have login required, but staff required or whatnot there. Otherwise, any user would be able to use to delete any other user. Unfortunate. And then there's directory traversal, stuff where you are able to get the contents of your etc passwd because you are able to inject // an arbitrary amount of times in your path. Luckily, I think the last security issue in Django in that regards was 2013, and I hope it stays that way. And there's only been 3 of them, so I'm rather confident to say there are no security issues with regards to the directory traversal in Django right now. So if you find one, please report it. But yeah, maybe you want to have an extra look for that. And then there's information leakage, like the last one where I don't even remember the last issue. Rather interesting on that note was where a while ago staff people could, while they couldn't see the content of objects through the Django admin, they were still able to see the admin log that Django creates and see how fields change there. Yeah, happens, I guess. And there's also, with information leakage, there's a difference between this user exists versus, well, here's all the data we have on this user. This one is unfortunate, one is bad. So when you have an information leakage somewhere, figure out how bad it actually is. And then, yeah, I guess all those 10 categories I mentioned here are part of the OWASP project, the Open Web Application Security Project. And, well, they provide this top 10 list. And over the last years, they seem to have gone more into the businessy perspective of things and less and moved away from the technical perspective. So the last one, the last top 10, I can really recommend to read and look through, and which is a more detailed list of the 10th I mentioned here, are the top 10 from 2013, because they're still valid and they're still there. And yeah, it's certainly not a bad idea to have a look at those OWASP things, and go from there and well, have a look through your code base and see how broken or how secure or insecure it is. There's always something you can find, and there's always something somebody didn't think of. And yeah, with that, thank you. Gracias.